Hello Year 11, this is your guide to the Elizabethan England PPE which you're sitting tomorrow. So just to recap on the question styles that you will come across, the first question you'll come across is a describe two features of question. It's worth 4 marks. You should spend approximately 5 minutes writing an answer to that question. The second question you'll come across is an explain why question. That's worth 12 marks and you should spend approximately 20 minutes on that one. And the last question is a how far do you agree question. It's worth 16 marks and you should spend approximately 30 minutes answering that question. Our first question, the describe two features of question, requires you to describe two features of an event, a person's attitude, a period of time, a law, other policies. Features is a word that often confuses students. Features just means parts of. So if we come away from history for a moment and imagine that you had been asked to describe two key features of a cat, you might be thinking that one part of a cat would be its ears, another would be its whiskers. We would then be asking you to add information about those things. So going back to our idea of a cat, one key feature of a cat is that it has whiskers. Whiskers are there to help cats judge space and to make sure that they don't get stuck. So if we bring that back to history, you could be asked to describe two key features of the religious settlement, for example. So what that's asking you to do is to describe two parts of the religious settlement. And the example you can see on the screen in front of you gives you two parts of the religious settlement in green. One feature of the religious settlement was the act of supremacy. A second feature was the act of uniformity. What you're then looking to do is to give detail to support those parts. So one feature of the Elizabethan religious settlement was the act of supremacy. This made Elizabeth Supreme Governor of the Church of England. The clergy had to swear an oath of allegiance to the Queen. A second feature was the act of uniformity. This established how churches should look and what type of services they would hold. The Book of Common Prayer had to be used. So what you'll notice about that model example is that there are approximately 3 sentences per feature. 1 sentence introducing the feature and 2 to support it. So you are aiming for 3 sentences per feature in your exam tomorrow. So 6 sentences in total. To help you practice this, there are 4 questions on the You Try section. And for each part, we have given you the feature. Your job for revision is to develop it. So for example, describe 2 features of Elizabethan government. And I've said to you that the court would be a feature, the Privy Council would be a feature, Parliament would be a feature. Go away and revise and make sure that you can add 2 sentences about each of those parts of government. The second question you'll come across is an explain why question. So you're being asked to explain why an event has happened or why relations have changed, and it's worth 12 marks. To get full marks on this question, you are aiming for 3 fully developed paragraphs. So those are paragraphs with a clear point, clear evidence, and explanation. The first thing you're going to do when you see this question is to underline the key words of the question. And that's really important because it helps you to identify the topic that you're going to have to write about. And the most common mistake that students make is to write about the wrong topic. So highlight or underline the key words of the question first. Really straightforward to start the answer to this question because you use the words of the question in the first sentence of your answer. So let's have a look at the example so that you can see what I mean. If your question was explain why Elizabeth faced challenges when she became Queen in 1558, you would rearrange the words of that for your opening sentence. In this case, one reason why Elizabeth faced challenges when she became Queen in 1558 was. And in this case, we've chosen the example of legitimacy. Once you have your point, you're then going to need to attach your evidence to support your point. So you're going to have to write more about the point. The two words that you use to do that are the words for example, because that allows you then to add more information about whatever point that you have made. To reach the top marks, you need to then be able to explain your answer. So when you've attached your evidence with the words for example, you then need to develop that answer by using the phrase this meant that. So to put that together, we have one reason why Elizabeth faced challenges when she became queen in 1558 was legitimacy. For example, Catholics in England believed that Henry VIII had not legally divorced Catherine of Aragon because the Pope had said no to the divorce. This meant that the marriage of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII was not considered to be valid, which meant that Elizabeth was not considered to be the legitimate heir to the throne. If you don't put the words this meant that in your answer, you are describing events, which means that you are capped with a number of marks that you can get. To make your paragraph even stronger, then you also need to add more evidence. So once you've written your this meant that statement, you're then going to write also and bring in a second piece of evidence. So in this case, also, Henry VIII had removed Elizabeth from the line of succession after Anne Boleyn had been executed. This meant that Elizabeth's position was weak. Therefore, Elizabeth was not considered by the Catholics to be the legitimate Queen of England. So just to recap those steps, Year 11, when you get into the exam and you see the explain why question, you're going to underline the key words because that tells you what topic you're going to write about. You're then going to rearrange the words of the question into the first sentence of your answer to introduce your point. To add evidence to your point, so to describe what actually happened, you're going to use the words for example. To turn that description into explanation, you're then going to add the words this meant that, and you're going to develop and explain what it meant. You're then going to make your answer even stronger by adding the word also and then introducing a second piece of evidence, and again turn that description into explanation by writing this meant that. You are aiming to do that or follow that procedure 3 times so that you end up writing 3 paragraphs in response to the question. The final question is a how far do you agree question. You're going to be given 2 of them, so I would advise you read both of them very, very carefully. The one that you feel the most confident about, the one that you know the most about, is the one that you're going to answer. You will be given a statement or a sentence, and you have to use your knowledge of the topic to make a decision about the statement that you're given. You're going to have to decide if you agree with it or you disagree with it. Now, to make your decision, you need to find and write about evidence that supports the statement and challenges the statement before you come to a final decision. So what we're looking for in this answer are 3 sections: a section to support the statement, a section to challenge the statement, and an overall conclusion. Now, to help you write an answer to this question, it is so important that you make a plan before you begin to write. So always allow yourself 5 minutes to do this. So the steps below show you how. Step 1, as with all questions, is to underline the key words of the question. So if we look at the example on the screen, the question is, the main challenge that Elizabeth faced when she became queen was legitimacy. How far do you agree? You may use the following in your answer: the break from Rome and crown debt. So underline the key words in the statement. And in this case, the statement that you're given is, the main challenge that Elizabeth faced when she became queen was legitimacy. So as you can see, we would underline the words main challenge. And for those of you who are aiming for full marks, you're going to need to decide what a main challenge might be. Became queen would be your other words to underline, and legitimacy. Now you will notice that you are given 2 bullet points to support you in your answer. If those bullet points help you, fantastic, you can use them in your answer. If those bullet points confuse you because you perhaps might not remember what one of them means, you don't have to use them. You can still get full marks without using them. So you don't have to use them. Don't panic. Your next job before you attempt to answer this question is to draw yourself a little table in your answer booklet. And your table is going to have 2 columns. The left-hand column is going to be information to support or agree with the statement in the question. And the one on the right is going to be information to challenge or disagree with the statement in the question. If you understand the bullet points and they're helpful to you, you could then put the bullet points in the correct side of the table, as you can see on your screen. So in this case, information to support the statement would be the break from Rome, and information to challenge the statement in the question would be crown debt. But if you don't understand the bullet points, or you only understand one of them, then you can put the one in your table or skip that step altogether. The third step is to then add information of your own to the table. So what can you remember about the challenges in this case that Elizabeth faced? Anything that you think supports the fact that her main challenge when she became queen was legitimacy, you'd put in the support column. Any other challenges that she faced that were not to do with legitimacy would go in the challenge column. By creating that table, you have just given yourself a plan, because the information to support column would be one section, the information to challenge section would be another section, and then finally you would make your overall decision. When you have your completed table, you're then ready to write a response to the question. Now you can start your question in 2 ways. One way would be to start the answer with "it can be agreed that," if you agree with the statement. The other way you could start your answer is "it can be disagreed that." It really doesn't matter, Year 11, what you decide, as long as you make a decision. If you are not sure, I would always agree. You're then going to use the words of the question in your answer. So in this example, it can be agreed that the main challenge that Elizabeth faced when she became queen was legitimacy. And you would then go on to explain what that particular issue was, using the same structure as your explain why. So for example, this meant that, and that would be your section 1 done. You've then got to present the other side of the argument. So you would start your second section of your essay with "on the other hand," and you would then go on to develop the information to challenge. And then finally, your last section is going to be "in conclusion." So in conclusion, I believe that the main challenge that Elizabeth faced was or was not legitimacy, and give a reason for your answer. In terms of the content that's going to come up Year 11, it's the highlighted sections that you can see on your screen now. The bits that are not highlighted are not going to be in your exam tomorrow. If you are still looking to revise content, there are 2 sources that you can get your content from. So on the left, it's the Pearson Revision Guide, which is the online revision guide, and you have the link on Arbor if you're not sure or you've lost it. And the pages that you are going to need from that online revision guide are shown in front of you. If not, you can use the Elizabeth homework booklet, pages 1 to 18, and that will give you all of the content that is coming up in your PPE tomorrow. Good luck, and I'm looking forward to seeing you before your exam tomorrow.